So every now and then I'll come across a post on the internet that surveys other Catholics about who their favorite YouTuber or Catholic podcast is. And in the interest of being authentic with you, because I'm as insecure as the next person, I will sometimes read those expecting to see my name listed there. And sometimes it is. But whether or not my name appears there, one thing I can always rely on is someone in the replies who isn't subtle about their antipathy for Catholic podcasters and YouTubers or influencers. Actually, fairly recently, I heard about a prominent clergyman in my area who very publicly declared that he thinks that Catholic YouTubers are self-appointed, arrogant, and low IQ. And since I'm one of the only people doing what I do within a reasonable vicinity of him, I couldn't help feeling like that might be directed at me just a little bit. And honestly, that kind of criticism doesn't seem to be in short supply. I fully expect that he's not the only person who thinks and says things like that. Dunking on Catholic YouTubers or influencers seems to become something of a popular pastime for a lot of people. So in the interest of some self-reflection and being honest with myself, I think that's a question I should ask myself. Are people like me self-appointed and unqualified, only serving our own conceit? And while I'm at it, I might as well ask, what do I think of so-called Catholic influencer culture? And what do I think of this seemingly growing habit of criticizing Catholics who find themselves in that position? One criticism that stood out for me in a post that I saw recently had to do with Matt Fradd, which is inevitable because he's one of the most prominent in this space. And it was, I don't know, somewhat innocuous. It was like, sometimes I like Matt Fradd, but then other times I can't stand him or the guests that he chooses or something like that. And then they just sort of went on to elaborate on their point. And that, like I said, seems innocent enough, but it stood out for me because it honestly sounded no different from the way that we talk about movies or TV shows as mere products for our consumption, for us to enjoy or not, and with our personal preferences being the only deciding factor. And I just remember thinking, that's not why Matt started doing what he's doing. And if people like this only knew his backstory, I wonder if they'd be thinking about him and his work as like a commodity. Because Matt didn't start his podcast or channel because he was starry-eyed and wanted to become a famous podcaster. He started it because he was doing what he had always done, which was devote himself to missionary evangelization. I knew Matt when he was an impoverished Net Ministries missionary, earning a wage that probably barely covered living expenses and came with a lot of hard work and sacrifice. And why was he willing to do that? Because he was willing to embrace that kind of a life if it meant he could share Jesus with the world. He looked at that prospect and said, yeah, I'll pay that price. I will suffer that fate for the rest of my life if it means I can do missionary work. And because he's clearly called and gifted in this way, God has blessed his efforts and given him more opportunity to speak to an impressively large audience. So when we talk about Pints with Aquinas or other such efforts, like we would items in a store that we either like or we don't like, I think we've fallen into a temptation to treat like apostolic missionary work, the mission of the church, those kinds of projects and the people behind them, like they are consumer products, which they aren't. And if it's not too self-indulgent, maybe I'll just share why I started doing the work that I'm doing. Because after seeing the success of apostolates like Word on Fire, I wanted to encourage other preachers and teachers to do the same. And I had a clergy friend here who I thought would be great in that role. He was one of the more prominent evangelists and preachers in this archdiocese. So I kept on encouraging him. I bought all the video gear. I learned how to use it, and I tried to convince him or anyone to sit down in front of the camera so that we could take advantage of the opportunities that new media was presenting to the church's mission, as had been proven as a proof of concept by people like Bishop Barron. But busyness and reluctance got in the way, and I couldn't convince anyone to do it. I had this studio all set up and no talent in front of the camera. So out of like restlessness and a desire to practice what I was learning and to provide a proof of concept for potential like evangelists that I could work with, I sat down in front one day and I just ranted about a topic that was being debated here in Canada, but was only getting one side of the argument. And then after turning the camera off and watching it back, I watched it and I thought, that's actually serviceable. So I somewhat reluctantly and bashfully started posting these little sessions that I would have in front of the camera to my own YouTube channel, fully expecting that nobody was going to watch them, but that they might serve as like at least a portfolio piece to show my production skills to prospective clients. And honestly, to my complete surprise, people started watching and interacting with those videos in fairly large numbers. At least it felt large to me. At one point, someone ripped one of my videos from my channel and then posted it to their Facebook page, and it ended up getting 500,000 views. It was at that point I realized that what I said had the potential to reach a lot of people. So, as you'd expect, I decided to take it more seriously and to focus more on what I thought people needed to hear about, which was the Catholic faith. Because before that, I was just talking about anything that was interesting to me, whatever just happened to be on my mind. It was honestly just me practicing videography. And yes, I've been told many times by some of those more credentialed people that I don't have the qualifications, or it's been implied that I'm an upstart infringing upon real teachers and real catechists and real theologians. But here's the thing. When I was a young adult, the new atheism was the thing that was sweeping the internet and the imagination of people my age. And it was more than obvious that this was influencing people away from their faith. And at the time, Bishop Barron was virtually the only Catholic voice addressing that and sounding the alarm that atheism was growing in audacity and potency. Meanwhile, how many missions or workshops or conferences or initiatives of any kind, how many of those were put on by the church to respond to this issue? I don't know about you, but in my archdiocese, I couldn't think of a single one, and I was pretty actively involved in the church at that time, as I am still today, obviously. No parish and no office within the archdiocese rose to address that concern. And now, more recently, a whole range of issues are begging for the church's attention and, frankly, correction. The return of extreme modernist political ideologies, wokeism, feminism, gender ideology in our Catholic schools, no less, and on and on. Again, no parishes, as far as I know, no catechetical programs, and nothing from the archdiocese in response. Just crickets. So on the one hand, I get how some people in that position can find someone like me raising my voice a bit annoying. On the other, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to try to respond. And in Canada, there's easily less than a handful of us trying to push back against those false ideologies, armed with the wisdom and the teachings of Holy Mother Church. And besides, doesn't Vatican II say that lay people have a role to play in evangelization? Come to think of it, as a matter of fact, it does. Both Lumen Gentium and Apostolicum Actuositatem. I don't know why when I say Latin, it sounds like I have an English accent, but I don't know, there it is. That's how it comes out. I apologize. Anyways, both of those documents from Vatican II encourage the laity to participate directly in the function of spreading the gospel and evangelizing the world, especially where only they can reach certain people. Paragraph 6 of the latter being very explicit and encouraging in that function. But that doesn't mean that everybody should be doing it. I think people like myself and Matt were very cautious in the way we went into this, and were willing to do it whether we were compensated for it or not. But I do encounter lots of people who see what we're doing, and that becomes their goal. I've even been asked for advice about how to become an influential YouTuber, which is, again, not why Matt started doing what he's doing and not why I started doing what I'm doing. I was doing something else, and God used that to open a door for me, which I reluctantly and prayerfully walked through, and I've been second-guessing myself ever since. That seems to be an attitude that I would look for if I was trying to encourage people in that direction. When Peter encounters Jesus in the gospel, he says, "Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." Peter didn't think he was worthy to be part of this mission, and I think something of that disposition should be at the heart of every true evangelist. And that's the thing about influencer culture. It's full of trappings and temptations that you have to be constantly on your guard against. If you've looked at it from the outside and found it seductive, you might want to think twice before pursuing it. But nonetheless, that seduction has probably attracted a lot of people to this kind of work that maybe shouldn't be doing it. And honestly, it does feel like it's become a bit saturated, which is why it makes it easy for some of us to dunk on people who are doing it, which might explain why that seems to become a growing popular pastime. But to be perfectly honest, I think criticizing others, whether they be public personalities or not, is something we do way too easily and at our own peril. And when it comes to our fellow Catholics, we should know better. These are real people that I'd like to think are trying to do this work to the benefit of the church and have probably made sacrifices to do so. Do they always get it right? Do I always get it right? Definitely not. But we're doing our best when the institution of the church seems to be paralyzed and silent because someone has to be doing it. The church clearly teaches that everyone has a right to a good name. So if we're going out on a limb to publicly criticize or denounce people that we have no intimate knowledge of, we're taking risks. We're not doing our souls any favors in doing that. And to be honest, I'm at the point where I don't think I should be criticizing others for anything short of serious sins or errors that are in the public interest. But criticizing some YouTubers because you don't like their guest, because they aren't based enough for you, or because of something as superficial as just the vibes, it's just not worth it given the spiritual liability that it imposes. Now, I hope you don't think I'm saying that Catholic YouTubers or online personalities are above reproach and that you can't criticize them. But what I am saying is that if you are going to criticize them, it shouldn't be for superficial things. It should be for seriously substantive things, and with some of the principles that I'd like to turn to St. Thomas Aquinas for. So in his Summa Theologiae, in question 33 of the second part of the second part, Thomas says that if we're going to correct someone for their sins, and we're sinners no less, we'd better make sure that we aren't guilty of the same sin and in the same degree. If we are, we need to keep our mouths shut because it's hypocritical and it's scandalous if people know that we're no better. He also says that if it could be a fuel for your pride, that's another reason to avoid doing so. And I say that this is probably the primary motive for most people criticizing others online. Highlighting the faults of others makes us feel morally superior. And who is an easier target than the people that are prominent and remote from us? But don't let that remoteness convince you that they aren't actual real people who are affected by being treated like commodities. Thomas says that when we offer correction, it should be done in a spirit of humility and with the realistic aim of helping the sinner reform. In the case of public criticism, you could maybe adapt that to mean a realistic hope that it will make things better or help the person to reform if there is enough public attention on their shortcomings. If it's possible that your criticism or your correction will cause more harm either to the recipient or to yourself, it should probably be avoided. So when we're denouncing or judging or criticizing Catholics in the public eye, especially those who are already getting it from non-Catholics all the time, we should think long and hard about what good that does. Is that helping them? Is it helping others? Is it done in a spirit of love and humility? Or are we just succumbing to that same temptation to treat everyone and everything like a consumer product that we can admire or disregard at our own pleasure? And just one last thing, if you'll indulge me on this, we absolutely have to get a grip when some podcaster or apologist says one thing that we disagree with and we completely just write them off. The number of times I've seen that in the comments on my videos is just like, really? They'll say things like, I'm a long-time subscriber and viewer, but now that you've said this, I'm unsubscribing. That is so unforgiving and unchristian. And I'd add unmanly for you men who do this. Like, I'm part of a men's reading and discussion group that meets once a month. And the last one, there was a disagreement about a difficult theological question that led to like raised voices and fist pounding on tables. But at every turn of that discussion and disagreement, we were all laughing at each other as we denounced our opponents and served anathemas and gave our best hot takes. And at the end, we all walked away brothers and friends. So why not treat other prominent brothers and sisters with the same courtesy and the same benefit of the doubt? I can understand tuning out if they are routinely compromising the faith, but one or two insignificant areas of disagreement shouldn't be enough to hold someone in contempt. Okay, everyone, thanks as always for watching that. I need to share an update for those of you who routinely watch my channel because I recently found out that that is refusing to recommend my videos in the algorithm because of my past defense of church teaching on certain, I have to be subtle here, like multicolored alphabet topics. Which means I need your help more than ever to help me spread good Catholic content. Make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell to know when these videos are released. And if you can, like, share, and comment, that helps nudge us back into the algorithm. And if you want to help in other ways, you can join my locals community where you can interact with myself and other like-minded people. We're also doing a monthly philosophy study with myself and a Thomist professor of philosophy. And seriously, how many opportunities are there for that kind of formation. It's been great, speaking from my own experience. So you can join at brianholdsworth.locals.com, or if you want to contribute in other ways, you can go to my website at brianholdsworth.ca/help.